Welcome to the 10th Delphi Forum. This is OT&TOVima.com broadcasting live. My name is Cheryl Novak. I'm Deputy Chief Editor of TOVima International Edition. And today at the Delphi Forum, we're very happy to have with us Mads Frederiksen, the Executive Director of the Arctic Economic Council, to talk to us a little bit more about some of the key challenges and opportunities happening up in a region of the world which seems geographically far from Greece, but perhaps shares some of the same challenges. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization.
So I represent the Arctic Economic Council, where I'm the Executive Director. And we are a business membership organization, and we actually have Greek members as well. So Union of Greek Ship Owners is a member of my organization. Normally what we do is we represent the people doing business in the Arctic. So from the 8 Arctic states, so that's Alaska, it's North Norway, it's Iceland, it's Greenland. And we do policy advocacy, we do networking, and we do communication about the business opportunities in the Arctic.
Very interesting. One probably wouldn't expect that there'd be Greek partners that far north, but if you consider the shipping element, it's very clear the reasons why. Definitely. So can you tell us a little bit more about the challenges that are being faced right now up in the Arctic? Understanding that climate change is having a great impact, but also under the new Trump presidency, there's increased geopolitical activity and pressures.
Yeah. So the Arctic is not even top of the world, it's also top of mind for a lot of people right now. Traditionally, it's been because of climate change. So global warming happens at 3 times the global average in the Arctic. So it's happening much, much faster up north. We call it the canary in the bird, in the mine, the canary bird in the mine, that because we can see the impact of climate change first in the Arctic before it comes to Greece. But when the ice melts on the poles, it will also impact coastal communities along the Mediterranean. But in the past few years, we have changed more from a climate focus to a more geopolitical focus. So you can say that policymakers have found out that the Arctic region got 3 things that the rest of the world needs, because it's a big region. The Arctic Ocean is 6 times bigger than the Mediterranean Sea, but there's only 4 million people living in this region. 10% are indigenous. But this region got, number 1, a lot of seafood to feed the world. Number 2, it got a lot of energy. Traditionally oil and gas, but also renewable energy. And then it got 3, it got raw materials you need in the green transition. And for many years, this has not been accessible, or people didn't know that there was opportunities there because people saw polar bears. But that is changing now. But still, climate change is still a main issue there. So it's biodiversity challenges, but there are still people living there. And that's what we in my organization are trying to say, is we need to preserve and protect the region, but at the same time, help to create sustainable development for the people living in the region.
So can you tell us a little bit more about some of the, which have been high on the news, geopolitical impacts, such as the increased interest of the U.S. government under Donald Trump, for example, in Greenland? How high on the agenda is that for your organization, and what sort of feedback are you hearing in general from the region?
No, it's very, very high up. So Donald Trump already in 2019 said that he wanted to buy Greenland. And the Greenlandic premier, an Inuit premier, he said, "We are not for sale, but we are open for business." And this is very much the voice that has been going again and again from Greenland. They are saying, hey, if you want to invest in mining, we are ready. If you want to invest in security military bases, we are ready for that. But we are not for sale. We don't want to sell our land. I think it's important to remember that Greenland, despite being the biggest island in the world, it's only 56,000 people living on this island. All of them 95% indigenous. And they need to trade with the world. They need to work together with partners. They need to work together with the US, but they don't want to be Americans. They also they want to be independent. They want to be Greenlanders as they are, but it's difficult when you're small communities, and that's generally what we feel across the region. You can even say Canada. If you go to the Canadian Arctic, Northwest Territory is the size of France, Spain, and Portugal together, but 43,000 people live there. So we got very big areas with very few people, and that becomes a challenge when China or the US wants to have a piece of it. I think it's important to remember, why is it that Trump wants Greenland? So one may be his ego. I think more likely it's because of security, because there's going to be a lot more shipping in the Arctic. and secondly, because of mining. All the critical raw materials you need are located in Greenland.
So you've mentioned indigenous populations a few times, and looking at the sustainable development side of things, my question would be, how does your institution, and how does it interact with these indigenous populations to ensure that their voices are heard when they are at the table with such big superpowers?
No, definitely, and that's a big challenge. So in the Arctic region, 4 million people, 10% of those are indigenous. If we go to the Nordics, Northern Norway, Northern Sweden, Northern Finland, is the Samis. It's the only indigenous group in all of the European Union. And those are located in the Arctic region. And they have a special seat in the Arctic Council, and they also have a special seat in the Arctic Economic Council. So we make sure, for example, even though they're 10% of the populations in the Arctic, they have 25% of the seats among our members. They have 20% of the seats in our board, so they help making the decision, and we actually want to empower their voice even more because they have been there for the longest in the Arctic region. And when you look at it from the sustainability perspective, innovation, it was the Inuits in Greenland that invented the first rain jacket in the world, using the waste from the seafood they caught, from the seals. They will make the first rain jacket, they will make the first snow glasses, they will make the first kayak. So they have been innovative for more than 1,000 years.
Oh, very interesting. So switching gears a little bit, you've talked about the draw for raw materials and resources in the region. Can you talk to us a little bit about fishing? Fishing up in the Arctic, which it's a double-edged sword. Climate change, as the polar ice caps melt, it opens up the area to new activities. What is being done to enable the world to exploit these new opportunities for fishing, but also protect the region?
So fishing is extremely important. So let's just, if we do like a very quick journey across the Arctic, Alaska, they had their famous king crab industry for many, many years. It totally collapsed 2 years ago because of climate change. That means the local communities can no longer catch the king crab they used to be able to do. Then we move across Canada, where it's traditional indigenous hunting, so that's primarily whale and seal and so on. Then we go to Greenland. 96% of export from Greenland is seafood. So for them, it's the main export. They don't have any alternative. If they overfish, they lose their economy. We can go to Iceland, where they are leaders in bioinnovation, and we can go to Norway, where it's the second largest export. And most of that seafood comes from the Arctic region. And it has always done it. If we go back into the times of the Vikings, we can see that most of the seafood sold in Northern Europe came from northern part of Norway more than 1,000 years ago. The question now, what is the future? I would say there's two things. So the future, number one, is we use what we catch, we use more of it. So in the old days, when we used to catch a codfish, we will only use 40% of the fish and the rest will be thrown away. This is not sustainable for anyone. So we need to do more with less. And there are some companies, especially in Iceland, there's a company called Qvist. They take the skin of the cod and make pharmaceutical band-aids. So now the skin of the cod is worth more money than the fillet of the cod. So this is an example of doing more with less, making waste into value. The second part is climate change again, and the Central Arctic Ocean opening up. Here we need to find out, we don't know if it's possible to fish there yet. We know that there's going to be a lot of countries that will be interested in fishing there. China will be interested, the European Union, Norway, US, etc. They all want to go and fish there, but we don't know, we don't have enough data yet. So there's an organization where Central Arctic Ocean Fisheries Agreement, this committee of parties, have decided we need to continue to collect data on this. So this is Korea, Japan, China, European Union, Russia, US. They are collecting data and finding out what kind of fish is there, because in 20 years' time, this is going to be ice-free. So that means it's going to be, for the first time in human history, a whole new ocean is going to open up to the world. And we need to do it responsibly. And for the people of the Arctic, people living in the Arctic, we are not interested in overfishing, because this is our livestock. This is how we live. We're also not interested in polluting our ocean, but the problem is outsiders might not have the same approach. So for us, it's important to have strict regulation that is science-based. And that's what we are working on as well. But it's difficult because being a big region with few people, we need to work with partners, for example, in Greece.
It's interesting that you mentioned a focus on science, particularly during this time when populism seems to be the trend. So it's comforting that perhaps in the future, up in the Arctic region, it could be guided with better technologies and approaches. In terms of governance, what would you see for the Arctic region? Because it is of interest to various parties.
So yes, we're definitely in a time of populism, but also polarization and post-truth. And this is a challenge to the Arctic region. The good thing, though, is that there are strong institutions in the Arctic and strong governance procedures. So the IMO is very active. So, for example, the Arctic region has banned heavy fuel oil. So that means you can sail around the Mediterranean using heavy fuel oil in your ships, but you cannot do that in the Arctic region. And that's because of governance from the IMO. The EU also has a governance procedure, and actually it's quite a governed, it's a completely governed place. Everything is done either through the UN or through the European Union or natural jurisdiction. It's not the Wild West, luckily. And it's also a territory of dialogue. They still, 50% of the Arctic is in Russia. So you cannot ignore that. When it comes to the oceans, you need to talk with them. And more than 4% of the planet is in the Arctic, and most of it is an ocean. So the ocean is super important, and that's also why there's very clear boundaries.
Perfect.
And very clear governance.
Perfect. So you mentioned shipping, which is of key interest to Greece and the Greek audience. As we conclude our interview, I would like you to share with us perhaps some information about the collaborations you have with the Greek shipping sector and any potential you see for further collaboration with this part of the world.
Definitely potential. Actually, I want to go back to December, 21st of December. The Greek Prime Minister actually went to the Arctic, and I think it was the first time. He was invited by the Finnish president to go to the Arctic. And the fact that a Greek Prime Minister goes to the Arctic in December when it's very cold and is a lot more comfortable in Athens says a lot that the Arctic is more important. The Union of Greek Shipowners has been a member of the Arctic Economic Council for more than a decade now. And they do this because the Greeks are very good at building ships. They're very good at operating ships, and they're very skilled at working in the shipping sector. This is what we need in the Arctic. We need a skilled workforce because we're not that many people, and we need the competences. But sailing in the Arctic is not for everyone. It's a tough environment, and here Greece has many years of experience, and we're interested in developing this even more. And then I also want to mention tourism. You know, a lot of people from the Arctic is coming to Greece for tourism, but there's also, we see a trend, people from the south wanting to go on coolcation. They want to go to colder places in the summer. And here the Arctic can provide you with, you know, spectacular nature similar to Greece, but in a much cooler climate.
Well, excellent. Thank you very much for your time today. It's wonderful to hear that despite this period of uncertainty in the world, there's still capacity for different countries and regions of the world to find common points of interest and collaboration. So enjoy the rest of your time at the Delphi Forum.
Thank you very much.